All right, so today I'm gonna try to keep track of time, but I'm definitely okay if somebody's like, it's it's hard to do everything, and that's when I need a real watch now, because I technically usually hardly ever use this for time. At home I don't anyway. So anyway, so I've got a lot I want to talk about today, and I know some of the guys were in here, and I thought, I guess, I really didn't think about guys coming in here, so I don't know. I kind of hate that, like, if they 6th grade is still technically elementary, but at the same time, I have to say, I was almost stressing just a little bit, thinking, I don't know if I'm going to say anything that they will even, except maybe at the beginning, because we're going to talk about a lot of principles and things so that's the first part of our thing today. But I'm really enjoying Equipped. It's been, I think, such a good weekend and so well done, and that's just amazing to me. And I love the title, Equipped, because it fits perfectly with what I want to talk about today. But first, has anyone gone to Polishing the Pulpit? Like, were you there last year? This past year?
No.
Okay.
I think 2 years ago.
Okay. Well, I taught a lesson actually about Bible school, and so actually it fit perfectly. And that's when Neil asked me. He's like, "We're having this conference," since this was back in August, and we would love for you to come and do like some Bible school workshop thing. And I think maybe one of the ladies from here maybe had mentioned that she had gone. So I was curious because I couldn't remember who it was. He didn't tell me who it was, and I didn't want to be just ignoring that fact. But I appreciate whoever that was, because they just thought it was so important, and it really is. And but a lot of that, the beginning of this is a lot of what I taught that weekend. So I was kind of hoping nobody was in here, just because I didn't want it to be a total repeat. But since he did mention us doing mostly the same thing. But that lesson was entitled Developing a Passion for the Bible School Program. And it really fits with any time you're talking to teachers, that you just kind of have to keep building that among teachers and having that excitement there. And so I don't know anything about this particular man. His name is Hill Gibran. He wrote a book. I think the title of that book is The Prophet. He could be I know he's not a New Testament Christian, but he could have things in this book that are totally inappropriate. So please, this is one of those situations where I was Googling, I found this quote, and this is an old book. I think he's like just a philosopher kind of guy that was kind of popular for a while back in the 20s and the 30s, I think. But there's a quote from him that says, "All work is empty save when there is love." And I loved that, because how true is that, where you have a job to do, but it just sometimes feels empty. And how do we keep that from being empty? We have to develop that love for that job, right? That feeling of importance or excitement about it, or it just feels empty. And so I loved that, and especially as it pertains to when you are thinking about teaching in a Bible class program, because so many times we do maybe feel empty with it as a person, sometimes as a congregation. It just feels empty. We don't really know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and things just dwindle and dwindle until we need a boost. And I think every congregation probably experiences that in different areas. And so that's part of what we're going to talk about today. I think that sometimes we think when we're talking about teachers that you either have it or you don't, right? You're either one of those awesome Bible school teachers with all of the stuff, and they probably, and I know Bible school teachers with a storage room out back of their house with all of their Bible school stuff. Miss Dot, Mary Carroll, she keeps it there. She wants to know it's taken care of. She makes a lot of it herself. She can do everything and anything, and just she has usually taught like the little 2s and 3s, and man, they can know that. They will tell you that the next year. They'll remember like those lessons she's taught because of the way she can present it. But you think about people like that, but most of us, most of the people who teach in Bible school programs, we want to do a good job, but we probably don't see ourselves as that kind of teacher. I know I don't. I want to do a good job because I think it's important. And so I think probably most of the people who work in Bible school programs and teach kind of fall into that category. We want to do our best. We probably don't feel like we're very, great at it, or we probably don't think we're that creative or artistic enough to really be one of those great Bible school teachers. But I think we can go a long way, and that's what I want to do today, into building the excitement and conviction in us. And a lot of what we're going to talk about, after we talk about just creating that excitement that we need in our congregations and in different groups, we're also going to talk about just how you go about the nuts and bolts of a Bible school program and making it the best that it can be, and things we need to think about. And at the very end, we're going to talk about, at the very end, we're going to be talking about, turn it on the side. I did it. I turned it off. I had it on turned off. And at the very end, we're going to be talking about just some really practical things about a resource room and curriculum room. And we'll talk about maybe the difference in those. And so those are the three chunks for this afternoon. All right. So I think, though, for this first time, we have to know when we're talking about if we really want our Bible school programs. Let me read this quote. This is a quote about that quote that I said earlier, that all work is empty save when there is love. Someone had written, and I don't have the name, this was on one of those forums where someone had asked a question, and this overachiever guy had this huge reply to this question about someone, whether they should stick with a job that they love or not, and all that. But I loved this part of what this guy was saying. The great challenge of passion is a shift in perspective it requires. Passion, just like love, is not something you feel, but it's something that you demonstrate in action. So it would be accurate to say passion is demonstrated by what you do. If you don't, worry about making a meal, and you're not passionate about that, well, it's going to show by how you go about making that meal, right? So, it's the same thing when you talk about doing anything. And then he says, to develop passion demands great honesty, high curiosity, and a compelling answer to the question, why? So a compelling answer to why you do something allows you to place complete focus on the tasks at hand. The tasks themselves may be unremarkable. Now, does this sound familiar sometimes with Bible school, like some of the things we do? They may be unremarkable, yet you regularly and effectively complete even the most mundane of them when there's fixed in your mind a compelling reason. Now, sometimes when I think about teaching, especially in the elementary department, the preschoolers are cute, right? They're babies and cute, and it's different. But as they get older, sometimes there's behavior issues that come up. I guess preschoolers can cry and throw little tantrums and stuff, but it gets a little bit different. And sometimes you might feel like that you're doing a mundane task. Like the adults they're going deep into the Bible, right? And you're in a classroom with little first and second graders, and you're going through the very basics of the Bible. And sometimes when we don't feel like we know why we're doing it, it becomes mundane, and we lose that passion and excitement, and we're just doing class with the kids so the adults can go do the real Bible classes, right? And we don't want to feel that way, and we don't want our programs to reflect that. So we have to really work at that as we think about our Bible school programs. So why? What is the answer to that question, why? Why do we do a Bible class program? Why should we do it? Why should it matter? So I want to talk a little bit about that. First thing is that we have to know that anything we do is worth doing well. So that's just a matter of principle, right? In the church, we know that. In society, we should know it better. But if you're going to do something, do a good job with it. And that's especially true, I think, in the church. If people come in and they see that the church is running a Bible school program, we need to make sure it's done well and that we've thought through it and that we can really, meet people and impact the children and show them that we are caring about this. So that's just a matter of principle. And then there's a matter of priority when we answer that question, why. A lot of times, children, we think it's so important, their schoolwork, right? And we know how important that is for their lives. We know how important the social aspect of them growing up is. We want them to go and maybe be in some activities, sports or clubs or whatever, and we make sure they are doing what they should do. And we probably expect the people running those things to do a good job because we're investing our time and sometimes our money and our effort into these programs or classes or whatever. So the church is similar, and our Bible classes are similar. When we are talking about doing something like a Bible school program, we think about what these other children are involved in and the time and effort that goes into that, then why would we put the Bible school program on a back burner and just do what we can do? We're doing the best we can, and we don't really take time to think and plan and work at it. So that's just a matter of priority. And that kind of stuff, we all know is true. We don't want to admit it sometimes, but the kids notice things like that. They really can see when we're putting one thing ahead of another one. So we don't want to do that, so we can teach them that Bible class is important to their lives, and it's the most important thing to their lives. We need to, the way we go about doing it should reflect that belief. And then a matter of purpose really is that when a congregation or a family decides to prioritize Bible school, the Bible school program, the Bible education, they really are investing into the future of the church. If we can start when children are young and teach them about the Bible and make sure they really understand the Bible, they're going to be way more likely to be faithful adults because they will have had the Bible in their minds. The verse, faith comes by hearing, right? And we can build their faith as they're growing up just because they're going to be hearing a lot about the Bible. So we can know all of these things about why. These are important. I think it's so easy to say, this is why we should do it. It should be. But then there's just this block, right? How do you get other people to be excited about it? We're always wanting more involvement. We're always wanting people to think it's important. But how do we do that? Well, I think we can do that in lots of ways that are really practical. If this workshop isn't anything else, I hope you'll see that this is really practical stuff and not things that are outside of what we can do, any of us. Any of us can do these things. So let's just talk really quickly. We're going to talk about creating that excitement in the congregation as a whole. We're going to be talking about creating that excitement with the teachers and then with the students and then just in the families, the family units in the congregation. So what are specific things we can do that will help people notice the Bible school program, be able to be more involved in it, and have it be more active? These are some things I think we can do. First, the congregation as a whole. What kinds of things as a whole can a congregation be involved in? Now, the first thing always is get more people involved. And you're saying, that's the problem. Nobody wants to do this. Right. So many don't. But we're not just talking about getting more teachers, although that's a major issue, I understand. We're going to talk about ways, maybe in the next little chunk here, about how to create that within teachers. But as a congregation, you can still have people involved in the Bible school program without them actually teaching in the Bible school program. So what are some ways? First of all, they can work on visuals. They can help. The Bible school teacher does not have to make the visuals. In fact, very much of this, a lot of it, over half, was made by people who are not teaching in this Bible school program at our congregation at Central. They are willing to take what somebody has prepared and cut it out, glue it on with a little bit of back with a little bit of instruction, you know, on the front end, and they are making, so a little, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself too much, but I will tell you that at Central, when we moved there about 5 years ago, they had just started the Apologetics Press curriculum. I don't know, it would be interesting to know, what curriculum do you all use?
Lads to Leaders, some of it for certain ages.
Okay.
Or for Sunday, maybe Sunday or Wednesday, I know we don't use Lads to Leaders.
We use Immerse.
Immerse, I've not heard of that one.
We see it through 21st Century Christian.
Yes, I have heard of it. I've seen it, yes.
You said that's the name of it. I was trying to think something about links.
Life Links,
Life
I've heard of that.
Links.
Yes.
Done that.
That's for the little ones, like elementary. Yeah. Okay, so
Shaping Hearts or something about hearts.
that is my favorite, yes. Shaping Hearts for God. Yeah, so do you attend here at Lehman? Peggy, or do you?
Scottsdale.
Okay. All right, so we all know there's so many different things, but all of them, you know what they all have in common? None of them have enough visuals. None of them. And so Apologetics Press has 0 visuals except what you might print out from their site. So when we moved there, they're doing this because they had changed. I think they had used to do like the Living Way, you know, that program, which comes with pretty decent visuals, actually. I guess I should say that. But so they changed, and all of those visuals are just sitting in buckets because, you know, it's a new program. We're going to get to that in a minute too, so just hold that in the back of your head. But I was thinking, we don't have visuals to use, and I think that's big time important for Bible school for teaching. I just feel like kids most kids need to get their eyes on something instead of just hearing you, you know, like y'all are doing now, hearing you just talking. And so like, I thought that's something we could work on. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that. But to say this is that about 15 women, 15 or 20, signed up on a day and a meeting we had, you know, on a Sunday afternoon, and we need some help making visuals. They said, sure. They didn't know what they were getting into, but they said, sure, we'll help. And so we have made a flip chart. We're on our 3rd year for the Apologetics Press, making a flip chart for nearly every lesson for 3 to 4 classes that do this, because we use it for 2s and 3s, 4s and 5s, 1st and 2nd, and 3rd and 4th grade. And then our 5th and 6th grade does the next thing that they do, like I can't remember what that's called now, the Discover series or something like that. But anyway, so they've worked really hard, and it's time, but it's not rocket science. It's not like, you know, you have to draw anything. It's just mainly gluing and stuff. So, but most of those people are not even teachers. I can do this sitting at home watching TV at night, or maybe they can't get up and get around to do much at all except maybe get to church, and they can take that home and work with it at the kitchen table, and they'll bring them back, and we've got flip charts, and the teachers didn't have to spend their time doing it. So that's a huge way. There's always something that somebody's laminated that could be cut out. There's something that could be glued together or whatever. And so use people, like have maybe a list that could be passed around, or every which way you could get people to know about it and get them involved in helping make some of the visuals. And that's a big way, because doing things like that help them feel they're a part of the Bible teaching at your congregation. Repairs, if there are classrooms that might need a coat of paint, there's probably a guy at your church who just is the painter guy that will come in and get the paint on the walls. And, you know, we have a couple of those guys at our congregation that we've had work days where we've painted some rooms because they were in desperate need of just a little bit of updating. But those are the kinds of things that get people involved who aren't teachers, but they start feeling like they're helping our Bible school program. Look, we need to update our classroom, so could you and you maybe volunteer to come over and, you know, and sure, and most of the time people are okay with that. And then special visitors. This would look a lot like if you're teaching a lesson about elders, the elders and their qualifications. Well, what better way to teach those kids that than to maybe have the last 10 minutes or so, one of the elders or 2 of them come in and sit around the table with the children and talk to them about elders and the qualifications and the work that they do. And that puts someone who's hardly ever in that little 3rd and 4th grade room, or that 4s and 5s room. I guess that's technically preschool, but that puts them in there, and those kids see those faces, and they know that these are the leaders of our congregation. For the elders, it helps them see these children face to face who are coming to these classes, and nothing but good can come from that. I think nothing but good can come from that. And the same could be said for deacons. The little lessons you might teach about Stephen being chosen as a deacon. Have the deacons come in, or 1 or 2, and tell them about the jobs that they do and what the qualifications are, and letting the children hear it from them. There again, it works for good for both ways, for the children and for the deacons to be able to come in. You can do the same thing for a new mother. If you happen to be teaching about baby Moses, or about Hannah and Samuel, or any other maybe I'm just losing my brain. Rebecca and having Esau and Jacob, maybe have the newest mom come in with a baby and talk about how it's hard, taking care, especially for baby Moses. How cute would that be? Like, if the baby's crying, that's a good visual aid right there. Like, oh, he's crying. And so things like that help people be involved that usually might not think, oh, I can never teach, but they could see they could still help be a part of things. And a widow could come in and talk about being a widow when you're teaching about Dorcas. If you support a missionary, or maybe your missionary's on furlough, and he can come in and talk about what that's like if you're studying Paul and his missionary journeys. You could do so if you're studying about the acts of worship, having the treasurer or something come in and talk about how what the money that you give, that little dollar, it helps us pay for this, it helps us send money here. Those are all ways to get so many more people in those classrooms involved in getting people interacting together. And that helps the congregation build that excitement for their Bible school program, because they've seen it. They're not in a completely different part of the building while everybody else is over here. They start feeling like, hey, yeah, and then when you need teachers, or then when you need some extra money, people are going to be a lot more likely to say yes, because they need that over there. I remember that classroom. It was, needed painting, and so I think that's a great way to get people involved. Making use of people with their organization skills. I have a friend named Lauren, and I talk about her when I think about this. I think about her when I think about this. Lauren is an organizer. She's 16, but she loves organizing. She's organized her mom's pantry and did it really well. She was showing me, I mean, 16-year-old. She's like, look what I did, Miss Leah. And she's showing me all this. She's going to help me organize our bulletin board things, because you'll see a picture in a minute. It's not very organized. She's going to help me one day when she has some time. We're going to lay all of that out and figure out the best way to group it and everything. That's a good way to get her involved and get her excited about classes and teaching already. So make use of people who have certain skills, or if you hear someone talking about that. Same could be true of decorating. If there's just that lady who just can make a space look nice and inviting, send her to that Bible class. That's what I would have to do, because I like, make this room look nice. Here's what I kind of like to do. I want this and this, and let her go with it. Let her make it just a gorgeous room with bright and cheerful. She might be the one to bring in, a lamp or something. I don't know, but it would look nice. And it's not going to look nice if I'm in charge of it, but somebody else who could do that, who might not ever want to teach. But hey, I can make this look nice in here. So that's important. Sometimes people wouldn't mind laminating things. That could just be their little job. They come in on a Tuesday morning. People leave some stuff in the laminate, and then they get it done, and you don't have to worry about that if you're a teacher. That's a good way to get someone else involved. And another way, this is kind of outside the box, but the book drive. And this is something I've actually done before, but not really for Bible school, but I really want to do this for Bible school. We did it for like a little library at church, but you can always get people involved in this way by making a list of supplies, books, resource books for the Bible class program, and having people sign up. You can think of different ways you can do this, but having people sign up to maybe purchase this book. Maybe there's this really nice teacher resource book. Or you could, make these little activity sheets from it, a copy, like one of those you can, make copies from. Or maybe it's something big, like a big eliminator. The one we have is terrible, you know how that goes, it's not working anymore. So having people who could do their part and help purchase that in a donating kind of way. And this would be above the church's budget, but this would just be a way to, and it'd be good to explain what's going on and here's what we're going to use these things for. It's been my experience that when people have a specific thing to give for, they are very much more generous than just the general money into the collection plate, which we all know is used for Bible school. But if there's like that one special thing, maybe it's some new shelving or a new set of books here and there that might cost, a little bit more. And even if the church could technically do it out of the treasury, wouldn't it be great to have more people just, here's that one thing we help buy. We help buy that eliminator in there. Kids, stay away from it. Don't you go in. Like they could say that we bought that. We really helped buy that. So I think that's good. And there's a lot of ways you could do something like that, but I think that is so beneficial. And so using the talents of your congregation can light your Bible school program on fire. It can take what used to maybe just be a handful of women or men working together to get it done into something that the whole congregation is behind. And I think that's so important. And these are some ways you can actually do that. And I've seen them work. I've seen people really become more and more interested in it. Another way you can do this is a long point, but what we were talking about, the whole congregation is, but another way you can do this, I see a lot on Facebook where a church has a Facebook page and they make these really nice graphics for the next quarter's adult lessons. Have you seen those sometimes? I have a couple of friends who share those. So it might be like, this, I'm going to use Central as an example, but like this next quarter at Central, the young adults, Romans, the ladies are studying Ephesians, and in class 103, there's a lesson, there are classes on this or whatever. Why can't we do that with what our children are studying? Why can't we also talk about what the adults are, but if you're going to make a cute little graphic, you can also make one that says the kindergarten through or K4s and 5s are studying, or depending on how you do your curriculum at your whatever congregation you're from, but like the whole elementary department studying the book of Genesis this semester, this quarter. Or it could be that, it could show that the preschool, they're studying this, elementary studying this, whatever it is, include the kids' study on those graphics. Because what does that do? It keeps that in the forefront of the congregation's mind. When they see, oh, they're studying 1st and 2nd Samuel this next quarter. That might seem like a little bitty thing, but it helps people think about the Bible school program, and it helps them be more involved in it and more excited about it. This would also apply to any kind of sign. I think I need to move ahead. Yeah. So letting the children, letting the congregation know what the kids are learning. And so any kind of sign. And this all is, congregations are all different. But if you're going to put a sign out in the foyer that directs visitors to an adult class, or even just a big sign that says just same thing like we were just saying, this may be out in the foyer. List those kids' classes there. If they need to know, if we need to know that the adults are studying Romans and the adults are studying Ephesians or whatever, then we should also let everybody know that the children are studying, Genesis, or the children are studying the divided kingdom this next quarter, or that the teen, this would apply all the way up to the teenagers in middle school, that they're studying this. So if you have any influence, that's a major, just a very simple change that can redirect people's thinking to the program. And same thing if you're talking about a bulletin insert every quarter about coming up classes, or a PowerPoint slide that somebody does. I know at Central there's usually some PowerPoint slides that flash, like, oh, this is the next young adult class. How about doing that with the next, elementary age classes coming up? Because I'm gonna say, you know, things that I know, that I believe. It doesn't always mean that I know, like, if you don't do this, it's like it's terrible. But it usually works better if all of the kids are studying the same, at least not the same lessons, but the same flow. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to get too far ahead on that, but this is more simple to do if, in fact, all of your elementary are studying from that same major area of the Bible. So we'll talk about that in a minute, though. And so, you know, of course, you're not listing all of every single class, but just the theme, you know, and especially remember some Shaping Hearts. This isn't on my mind. Their quarter names. Somebody else will look at it and go, "What in the world? Like all things made me? What's that about?" It was about Genesis, you know. And so, build your life for God. That's another quarter. That's just about Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther, about building back the temple, you know. So be thoughtful about, okay, they need to know that this is biblical and this is what it really means. So you could, you know, put in that as a subtitle to make sure people understood. And so small changes, but big effects sometimes. All right, now, then about building excitement into the teachers. What can we do? The first thing is we don't need to work our teachers to death. So they need breaks. And that's easier said than done because, you know, we all can go back to the things that a lot of people might not want to teach. But hopefully doing some of the things we're doing changes that a little bit and more people can say, yeah, because I've seen that this is an important thing. I'll give it a go. Hopefully that would be the idea. But so don't work them to death. Try your best in a congregation to be on a rotation as much as you can, even if it's just a quarter on, a quarter off. If you have somebody you can swap with, or ever how, you know, it works the best at your congregation. But it would be really good to stress the importance for your teachers to also be able to have a quarter off so they can go to those adult classes and grow their faith. I know, some teachers just really do not want to do that. I think they ought to. They don't. I used to really feel strongly about this, but I know more and more I have seen teachers who that's just what they do, and it doesn't mean they're not strong in their faith and studying deeper themselves, you know, but try to encourage that, at least from time to time. And especially if the person who really wants a break, I think they need to know that that's okay, and we need to try to make that happen. And then show them appreciation. It's as simple as like a dinner once a year or letters from the elders. We should be doing that kind of thing a lot more from the eldership's point of view, if you have any influence there at all. But a note from the elders saying, we really appreciate you, Sister So-and-so, because you're willing to teach, you know, that third and fourth grade classroom. We know you're doing a good job, but think how encouraging that is. Or from a parent, from the parents. Or if you can have any group in the congregation, write a note to a teacher who's been teaching for a quarter. How encouraging is that? That would build the encouragement and the excitement back into teaching. Let her know that people are really paying attention to what she's doing. And the other thing, I was going to say this too about trying to get teachers and giving people a break. That does open up the question about, well, if we're going to give teachers a break, then other people have to come in and fill it in, right? And it reminded me of a story back years ago, but we were trying, and I was trying to start a rotation for teachers because we didn't have it and wanted more. And our teachers were getting older, and I was seeing that what's going to happen when these older teachers go? These younger teachers won't even know what they're doing. Don't they at least need to be in the classroom some, and you know? And so I thought, we need to do this. Well, we had a quarter come up where we couldn't get for this one class any teachers. And we had a meeting the Sunday before. And I mean, this is kind of funny now because, I mean, I know I'm not old now, but I was really not old then. I was really young. Looking back now, it's probably one of those too zealous kind of things. But I just remember trying so hard to say, next Sunday there won't be a teacher in that. We're gonna rotate. Like that's what we promised them. We told them they wouldn't be in there longer than a quarter. We need people to sign up for 3 months to teach. You know, I tried, and I remember saying, and this is true. You know, we're not talking about teaching trigonometry. we're teaching about Abraham. We're teaching about, you know, the old, you know, we're talking about teaching little kids the basics of the Bible. To, you know, we don't need to get so much feeling like, oh, I can't do it, I can't do it. We need to try to show people that, look, you can do it. Some of the things we're going to be talking about in the next session are going to really help with that, especially the last section of this. We're going to really talk about how to make people feel more able to teach. Okay, but I felt I was going to say that because it is true and it's hard to get those people involved. All right, another thing for teachers actually is, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we need to make sure that, like we were talking about the classes, mentioning what the kids were studying, you can also, if the teachers know, or if the congregation knows that Brother Smith is teaching this class in the adults, Sister Jones is teaching this class for the ladies, then why can't we say, and Sister, which one I haven't used, Sister Smith is teaching the first and second grade on the divided kingdom this quarter. And if that's on a sign or a PowerPoint or in the bulletin, include the teachers' names of the elementary department or the preschool, whichever it would apply. Because that says to a teacher, the ones who are doing it, I'm not a second-rate teacher, and I'm important to the Bible education of this congregation. It's not just about Brother Jones and, you know, Sister Jones or whatever who are teaching the adults. Like, this is just as important, and that's a small way to show teachers that their work is important, that it's not just a babysitting service that they're providing for people. So just remember that, and also really try to ask face-to-face. At Central, this has happened, where people move in, and we have this, I think it's called a work privilege list. And that might be the last time that someone's asked about if they'd be willing to teach for a while. And if, of course, and I'm saying this, if I'm moving into a congregation, I am not about to sign up for something until I know what it means, what it's like. So it's understandable that somebody, they're going to skip over that part. They're not going to sign. They might intend, I'm going to find out more about it. Then if no one ever comes to ask them about it another time, then people assume, well, they didn't want to teach. So, you know, they had a, but that's not always true. It's also not true that getting up on the Sunday morning and saying, well, we need more teachers, let me know. That's not going to work. How many people, you might have a couple of good souls who will say, yes, let me do it, you know, but it's better if as a group of teachers, or if you are, you know, over the choosing of that, or if it's, you know, one of the deacons or something, but having some ideas like, you know what, I think Susan would be great. I think she just needs a little bit of encouragement. I know that she used to teach back at their previous congregation, you know, but she just hasn't said anything about it now. But let me, and encourage people face to face that we need good teachers, and I think you would be good at it. Why don't we do it together? Why don't you come in and we'll just do it together this quarter? Maybe next time you can do it, you know, with someone else. But I think face to face gets you a lot farther. And another thing is providing organized materials. If a teacher is asked to teach and she thinks or doesn't know, she might think, I have to do all of it by myself. I'm seeing all these things coming out, the kids bringing this project out, or, you know, they're coming out with their little sheep, or they're, you know, and she's thinking, I don't know if I can come up with all that. I mean, most of us can't. We'd just be like, I don't know. They might just be uninformed, but the more you can present to them what you have available, and having some things available, some simple things, it would make them feel like, okay, I can use that. Yes, okay, I think, and so that's what this table is about, and I'll show you later. But having it organized, it's just stepping on toes, because I know what it's like to have to organize all of that stuff, but it is going to be harder to have people involved in the teaching if the resource room or curriculum room, for one, if there's nothing for them to use, but also if it's just the only person who really knows where anything is like the one or two teachers who are just like on it all the time. You know, they might be able to show everybody, but the person that was kind enough to volunteer to maybe try to teach, you know, then they're probably not going to know what anything is and what it's useful for. So having that in your mind to show people and to work toward is really important. And that's, we're going to be talking about that at the very end. So in specific ways you can organize. Because I do think that that helps people feel like they can teach and that they are equipped for teaching. And give plenty of opportunities for feedback. Don't just throw them in the classroom and never ask them how it goes. If you have any involvement or any kind of leadership over that, ask, how is the new organization working? Is it working for you? Or do you like the new curriculum? How do you think we should divide this class up? Like, get feedback. Don't just wait till they come to you. Get some feedback and go to them and get feedback from people. Even if you're not, like I'm not an officially anything on education at Central. We have a deacon. I'm in an informal, unlabeled role as I just want to have things to use for classes when I teach. I want teachers to be able to teach, and so anything I've done has just been totally unofficial. But when you step into that a little bit, and I think it's okay to do that. I think that's when the program's going to grow, is if somebody who doesn't really have that official role can start inching into a leadership role with it somehow and say, why don't we do this? Do you think it's okay to do this? And maybe ask the elders about doing this or doing that. Then you're eventually going to see things moving. And other people will think, well, I have an idea, so let me run that by the elders, or let me see what they think. So I think having that mentality of just being able to have some authority a little bit over it is helpful, and just feeling like we're all in this together and you don't have to wait on someone to label you the coordinator of the elementary Bible school department before you can do something big even. So I think it's important for us to remember that and go to them and say, how's that working? You know, if you change the resource room around, ask and make sure that it's working for people or they're going to hate you. I've kind of been there before. So anyway, now, I'm getting lost. All right, now the third group is, of course, the students. How can we be building excitement and passion about our Bible school program for the students? Because we wouldn't have one without the students, right? If we can't get students to come, we don't have a Bible school program. So what are some ways that we can make it exciting and make it useful for them? So, no, you can't have a workshop without saying we have to be prepared. As hard as it is, you really do need to know what you're teaching and have put some thought into it before you show up on Sunday morning. And I know what it's like. You know, I've had 2 kids where I was barely able to get us out the door, much less, you know, remember to bring my file folder that I had. You know, it's just, there's always room, though, for improvement where we can think ahead, plan ahead, and that also in a good resource room is really invaluable, so that you know, okay, I'm just going to grab that right there, and I think I'm good. But even that is preparation because it's already been prepared for you. So be prepared. Don't just show up and say, like, what lesson were we on today? Oh yeah, Samuel. Okay. And so we need to be prepared. It shows when you're not. I'm the queen of winging it in a Bible school, but probably, you know, the more you work at it, the more you know that you're going to make more mistakes if you're not prepared. You're not going to be expecting something. So try to do our best at that. And this is a big one. Expect visitors. Sometimes we have our rut, you know, and this is all, the next few things are going to be very relative to the size of the congregation you attend. I know that. So just use this for what it means for your congregation, but you know, if you're in a place where you don't have a lot of visitors, it's real easy to just not expect anybody. But what happens when that one family who finally decided to come shows up and you didn't have anything ready for that visitor, or you didn't have the extra that you needed, and you're, you know, scrambling at the last minute or having nothing? We need to expect that they will come. If we talk about inviting and evangelism, let's expect that maybe that one family that's a neighbor to the other family, that they might come, or they moved into a new, they just moved in and they're kind of seeing where they want to go to church, and they come here and you're not ready, but maybe they've been to another church where, man, they were on it. You know, they had it all planned out, ready to go. So things like that matter. And so expect visitors. It helps the students feel like, oh, this is important, and my teacher really cares about this. And then I'm gonna get to that one in just a minute, but I want to talk a little bit real quick about classes for certain ages. And this is where it's really tricky, because it would be so different from place to place. But really think, and we're going to talk a little bit more, a lot more actually, about this in just a few minutes, but think about when you're thinking about visitors or children in general, don't just not have a class ready for a visitor. Like if you have a gap, and this is what we deal with right now at Central, like we have a gap in our 1st through 4th grade. It's really unusual because we have about 200 membership, so it's not, you know, that small. But it's funny that we have this age group that we don't have very many kids in at all. And so, you know, what's been really easy to do is not have something ready for that age group. But then when that one family comes in with a couple of kids, you know, what do we do with the kids? We don't know what to do with them. And so be prepared like that, and expect that maybe that gap that you've been so comfortable with is going to not be so comfortable when you actually have some kids walk through the door, and they're like, you don't want your first grader having to send them down to the 5th and 6th grade room. I wouldn't like that as a parent. If I was trying to out a congregation, you know, it'd make me feel kind of like, well, I mean, so, you know, there are different ways you can do that. You can be ready with some extra lessons if you have that gap, and say, at least if we have a visitor this quarter, even though no one here is in this age group, somebody or two somebody's can be on call and just have like a bag or a box ready that has all, you know, just some basic lessons ready, like 2 or 3 of them, just to be ready to say, if somebody comes for our class, we're ready for them, even if it's somebody unexpected. And that's not that hard to do, you know, it's really not. It just takes a little bit of thinking and planning, and you can print things off the internet. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, and make a nice lesson and a nice little activity or craft or something for them to take back to their parents, and I think that would be so good for them. And then also just sending letters to your students before you start the quarter. It's a small way of letting them know you're excited and that you expect them to come. All right? If Johnny gets a letter from you and you tell them you're excited about teaching, we're going to be learning all about Moses this quarter, and I can't wait, you know, so please come. And probably some of those students you're going to be able to count on, but some of those students might never come, and that one letter really might get the attention of the student or their families, and I'll mention that in just a minute too. So, and also really simply, I've always heard it's really important to be involved outside of the classroom with your students. So if you know that one of them has a little t-ball game and you can go, that would be nice, and for them to see their teacher and, you know, give them a pat on the back and cheer them on. I think that would be a very nice thing to do, and it helps the students feel important, and that's the big thing. Now, we should also be trying to build the excitement with our families. So, and this is a little kind of like with the students, but it's a little bit different, because a student might not notice something, but their mom or dad might, you know. So when we're in the classroom space, make it look really educational. Make it look like you have put some time and effort into that. Really do a good job with it. And then the families come in and they can see that their kids are being prepared and they're ready. We can send a letter to parents, not just to the kid, but maybe a separate one to the parents, where you talk about, really wanting to encourage them to do this, that it's hard, if you've had children, you can say that, like, I know it's hard to get out the door, but it's so important, and we're just so excited and hope you all will join us for class. We're going to be studying, and I like, if you're going to do this, be really educational, but we're going to be studying I'm just trying to think of an example off the top of my head. We're going to be studying the United Kingdom this next quarter, and if I'm a parent who needs a little push, that might give me a push to say, you know what, I think we need to go. They need to be involved in that. And so that would be a simple thing to do, to get a family excited. And also don't neglect take-homes, because the take-homes excite the family because they know what the kids have studied. If you've ever asked your kid what they've studied in class, good luck. Sometimes they're able to answer. Sometimes you're like, and this is a funny story about Mary Carol. I'm going to embarrass her. When she was like in the 5th and 6th grade now. And so for a stream of Sundays, we would ask her, I thought it was
5th and 6th is when we had those goofy little panels. 3rd and 4th is when we had Esther.
Okay. So maybe it was 3rd and 4th, but and I think you're right. I do remember that one now. So we kept saying, what did you learn about? She was saying, we mostly reviewed, which we were always like, yeah, that's an easy answer. We mostly reviewed. That's about every class, right? And then she says, then we studied Esther. And so for about 4 or 5 Sundays, she was saying Esther. And then we got on to her. We did the whole lecture about now. We expect you, young lady, to pay attention and be able to tell us what the Bible lesson was about in class. Because it was so out of character for her not to be able to say, we studied about when Moses went across the Red Sea and how he did this and that. So, and then all of a sudden she's like, oh, we studied about Esther and Haman. And so I thought, I don't know what's going on in that class. Why is she not coming back to tell us what they learned? And then one day I was at the church building and walked in, and unbeknownst to me, there's a whole quarter of an Esther, like it was the living way. I'm like, oh, because I had not been teaching at that level, but on that intermediate level, the whole quarter was on Esther. So we had to apologize, like, yeah, we're sorry we got on to you because you were really saying it was about Esther. Because I'm thinking, maybe 1 or 2 lessons tops on Esther. You can't be studying that all month long. Yeah. But so having a take home gives the mom and the dad like, oh, look, there's that look how they crossed the Red Sea. And did you learn about Moses? And it just opens up those conversations about the parents knowing that their kids are learning and knowing it's important, and also encouraging them to use take-homes as a way to review at home is good. If you can maybe explain that or send a letter home at the beginning of the quarter and think about take-homes in that way, that's a really good thing. That's a way you can actually review at home with the parents. And then maybe if you're really wanting to make people be excited and build up this Bible school program wherever you are, doing like a little open house where the parents can come. When they're babies, the parents take on the classrooms, right? They walk them over. But once those kids are able to walk down the hall by themselves, a lot of parents never even see the classroom. And it would be nice if you could really, have their stuff that they've been working on, just like at school, and have them come in, maybe have a plate of cookies and, some drinks or something, and just say, what we've been learning about, and maybe work all quarter long about them being able to answer the questions. And I think that would be a really good way to let parents know. And it's nothing that's that hard to do. It's just like one afternoon at the end of the quarter and say, we're going to just invite you all over, like maybe at 5 o'clock before church, just to come up and see the classroom and all of that. I think it's wonderful to be able to see all of those things. Now, so as we go and do this, so you can get to a place where people are excited, but that's where the really practical things start. This is more about building excitement, what we've been talking about, but you can build excitement and then it just fades when nothing else is being done, right? So we do need to evaluate things from time to time. We have to think about, is this working? Could we do better? And I believe that we are able and we should be able to look at certain areas of our Bible school. And that's our the next big chunk I think we're going to talk about. And then we're promise. I feel like I'm talking so much. But, so what do we need to evaluate? First is the classroom size. Okay, we have to evaluate. I'm sorry, I'm just going to skip over that. So evaluate the space, like your size of the classrooms. Is it fitting? Are you squishing in 10 kids into this tiny room unnecessarily? Sometimes it is necessary, but it depends on your building. But maybe if there's this big old storage room full of junk that everybody needs to get in there and throw some stuff away anyway, maybe, you know, that could be a classroom to accommodate a bigger class. You know what I'm getting at. Just really think about, is this the best use of our space for these classes? And you could also talk about whether or not you should combine a class or split a class up. You know, if you've got too big of an age gap, maybe it's better to split them apart. Maybe it's better to combine when you're only having 1 or 2 kids. But, you know, evaluating that means, is it good to combine? I don't think it's necessarily good to combine 6th graders with 1st graders. I know someone's, well, we feel like we have to do that. That's probably not usually true. You have to do that. It's easy to do that. But let's just start, you know, evaluating and seeing what's the best way we could go about this. And then, and it's the same thing we talked about earlier with kids who are maybe there every other week. That gets trickier in our days of divorce being crazy, where kids are maybe when they're with their mom, they're there, but when they, you know, or vice versa, when they're only with their dads when they come, or they come with their grandparents every other week, possibly. But thinking about all of these things and being aware of it helps you make the best decisions as you go forward with it. And putting on our best effort as far as like the cleanliness of the room and the furniture that we have in there. Those are all really practical things that we really have to lay eyes on and really address. You know, are you trying to teach in a classroom with broken down chairs, literally, that might actually hurt your kids, which, you know, we've had to throw out before because we're like, oh, look at that chair. But just paying attention to that stuff is just so critical, I think. And then we talked about being aware and evaluating your specific situation as it pertains to those visitors, like we mentioned earlier. Those are things that, as a congregation, you need to decide. Here's an example. We've had, I told you, the break from 1st through 4th grade, and there hasn't been anybody. There could be maybe 2 or 3 kids in there, but those in that age group are not very regular at all, or usually don't come to Bible class, which is a whole other problem, but that's the reality. So there's usually no one in there. But there's a 5th and 6th grader boy who has autism that the teacher was really having a hard time handling, like in the classroom. So because no one was in there, they thought, well, maybe he needs to really, and he had not come to church very much. So they thought maybe he needs to be in there being taught how to act in Bible class one-on-one. What might be better for him to do that? Teach him he has to be, you know, seated. Well, that sounded good until you have another visitor or 2 who start coming, or maybe somebody who's like thinking about coming to church, and then you've got this boy, and it's a different kind of class, and you're not ready, you know. And so just a couple weeks ago, I was saying that is something we really need to think about, because we've had this visiting family sending their children there, and we need to decide if that's the best thing we need to keep doing or not. And so it's just about thinking and you know, being excited about it is one thing, but really the X's and the O's, so to speak, of like how to get it done, this is where this comes into place, and doing the best you can with it. Let's see. All right. Oh. That's one too many. So thinking about, you know, your space. Does the classroom need painting? Does it need cleaning? Whatever you need. And sometimes when you're helping a congregation like this is where everything just halts, I think. Brakes get put on because you start talking about money, you start talking about buying this, changing this, and you sometimes you start thinking, that's where people say, wait a minute, I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if we have enough money to do that. I don't know if we need to change this out or not, because we've got money. And sometimes, it's genuine. Sometimes it's not. Well, we need to spend, we are sending money over to the mission field, and they don't even have a church building, which is true. And that's something to think about. But at the same time, we're dealing with what we are now in our culture, in our society. So sometimes it's hard to navigate that. But doing the best you can to let people know it's worth it, all the stuff we've been talking about helps with that maybe. But it's still important for our kids in our congregation and in our country to have the best classes they can have and the best equipment they can have. And so we can get bogged down in all the priorities and everything like that, but usually we can make it work and we can do the best we can with it. And I think that's will be very important for them as they learn and grow. The kids will see that. And I think it's just important for us to maybe try to express the need for certain things at the right time. But that leads us to the next topic, and that's just evaluating the budget. Sometimes budgets are not even being used. I've actually, seen where there's a line item for Bible class, like how much have we used? Well, we still might have a few $100s. That should be used. Maybe have somebody paying attention to that. We don't need. We need to use what we have and make sure that the money is being used. You would think people would know better than this, but I'm convinced that there sometimes, because I have always been I've been married to a preacher, for all my adult years. And so sometimes I take it for granted, and I'm going to say this loosely, like a regular member, how they might look at the budget. And I've heard people think that they don't need to ask about this because maybe, if the glue sticks haven't been replaced, maybe we're saving money. Usually it's probably because nobody's brought it up. It's okay to go and say, we're out of glue sticks in the resource room. Or, so having people be aware that there's a budget and it's okay to use it is a good way. It needs to be expressed. And so that's something you need to think about, how much money is used. Can we use more? Do we need to use more? Or can we get our equipment more updated because we actually do have it in the budget? And then still, remember, doing those little extra drives can help with that too. Maybe it's not in the budget to buy this or that, but people probably would donate that money on top of what they give to church already. So I just think that's funny. So, and I'm just running up through those. All right, and then evaluate teachers. Now, I'm not talking about when principals come in and you sit there with your notepad and talking about all the things they're doing wrong, but evaluate what the ins and outs of teaching is like in your congregation. Do you have enough? And if you do, great. If you don't, you're probably like everybody else. Make sure, remember, face-to-face is always better. And explain what you need when you're evaluating your teachers and thinking maybe you do need more, but explain what it means in your congregation to teach. Let them know. If you do rotate, if you're going to ask someone, let them know. We rotate. You only have to do it from here to here, and then we'll go from there. Let them know where your materials are. Let them know how they can use them and that it's okay to use them. Train teachers. You evaluate when you're looking at who's teaching. Do we have teachers who are going to be ready to replace these teachers? Evaluate all of that. Keep looking and looking and looking and making notes about what you could do to improve. All right, and let the teachers know. If you're asking for teachers, I think it's better than just to get up and say, like I mentioned earlier, we need teachers for next quarter. I think it's good to say we need teachers. Our kids are studying this curriculum and they are studying this part of the Bible, and it just sparks enough interest that somebody might go ahead and do that. But when I'm saying evaluating, I'm saying really think, how do you go about the teaching program in your congregation? the teachers themselves. Like, how are they equipped? How are they evaluated, or how do they give feedback? How do they, know where their things are and what to use, and really just think through it. And it helps because people will generally improve if they know that they're being considered, or that you're being considerate of them and thinking about their needs. And then, this is a big one. Sorry, I keep forgetting to go down the list. So, number of teachers, rotation, to train them, inform them of things that they need to know. All right, and then evaluate the curriculum. This is a big one. This is about the last one we're going to talk about. So, here's what we're going to do. I think that a chronological curriculum is the best, and it's disheartening to me that there's not very many of them. I think, and this is why it's important, we can teach chronologically, and I really don't know why there are not more Bible school programs written out chronologically. And this is what I mean. I don't have my Bible with me, but most Bible school programs jump from one place to another place, and they go back over here, and then they go back over there. Very often, we run our programs like that, and I don't want to step on toes here, but I'm just telling you my personal opinion. When we go from the Old Testament on Sunday to the New Testament on Wednesday to the Old Testament again on Sunday, or we go from quarter to quarter to quarter, we're going back and forth. How in the world are we going to teach kids the narrative of the Bible? We try to teach them like adults who already have learned of that, maybe. And I'm thinking a lot of adults don't really know the narrative of the Bible, and wonder why, because they've never been taught that in all their years of Bible classes. I was an adult before I realized that when you turn to the book of Nehemiah in your Bible, that's the end of the narrative, the story of the Bible. And that all those prophets, all 12 books after Nehemiah, and well, not counting the books of poetry, but all of the, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, all of those didn't happen after Nehemiah. They happened during the history, during Ezra and Nehemiah, or during back even in the books of the Kings and Chronicles. And you have to teach people that. That's part of the education program, is to teach them. And there's so many ways you can do this. First, I think there again, to have a curriculum that actually does it. Shaping Hearts is about the only one I know of that does. Apologetics Press doesn't. Their Old Testament is chronological, but they put in New Testament quarters, like every 2 quarters you go back to the New Testament. So even that, like for a little 6, 7, 8-year-old, they can't keep track of is Peter. How do they know? Is Peter in the New Testament or Old Testament? Because back last month they were talking about David, and now this month we're talking about Peter and Acts or whatever. And just imagine how confusing that is. And I don't know a real answer. I tried my best to think, how could you, even with our curriculum, Apologetics Press, you could teach the Old Testament straight through, but then when you get to the New Testament, and I love the curriculum. I think it's a really thorough curriculum that, they have embedded links within their lesson, so it goes back to the apologetic side of things. There's a lot of teacher helps in there, but you can't arrange their New Testament in any kind of chronological order, because, and I know the New Testament is not exactly chronological like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but what I mean is, they have all these little extra quarters, and it's just all mixed up. You'd have to look at it to know what I'm saying, but I'm thinking, I don't know if I could even teach that way. I want our program to be that way, but I can't get it to be that way. There may be ways. I know someone told me, and I don't know if anybody uses this, that Bible study for all ages, even that is not chronological, but you could make it, they say. But it's a shame that we have to do that. And in the church, why can't we say we're studying the Old Testament? Because the Old Testament teaches all along the way about the coming Messiah. And kids can get that. They can understand that when Jesus gave, or when God gave the law, and then those people, had to wander in the wilderness, and then they conquered the promised land, and then here they had these judges, and then they have the kings, and then they go into captivity. And those are the biggest chunks of the Bible, and the kids are never going to get that if we're swinging them back and forth and back and forth. So that's probably the most depressing thing I'm going to say today, is that I think we could do so much better at teaching them the chronologically through the Bible. And then they would understand when they get to the New Testament why that's such a big deal and why that's so important. Even on their level, I think it's so important. So, I don't know. I think you can, it's just something we need to improve on as a whole in the church, I believe. You can always design your own curriculum. You can always just say, we're studying through the Bible, and here are the examples, and here are some materials, because most of this does not even come from a Bible school curriculum. It comes off the internet, and we're going to talk, that's the next thing we're going to talk about in just 2 minutes. But so when you're evaluating curriculum, if you're thinking, what can we do new and different? Think, is this chronologically based? Because that would be so much better than just using something that's back and forth and back and forth. Think about, too, don't just use curriculum because you've always used it. That's just not a good idea. That's not a good idea to do that, because it might not be the right one. But don't change just because we've used this for years and we need to change. It could be the right thing for your congregation. It could be the right one for your kids. So it's about, like I said, evaluating. Is this the best thing for us? Could we do better? Could we do worse? And do all of those things as you're thinking and praying about your thing. And I would say, I think I'm just skipping. Anyway, I think it's good to study through the Bible in cycles if we're talking about curriculum real quick. I think, like, you can study through the Bible in 3 years with kids, or 4, and then start back over. And then usually that means that they've gone through the Bible before they get to junior high 2 or 3 times, completely through it. And if it's been chronological, then they can't have missed the narrative of the Bible and when things happen, and if this is in the Old Testament or if this is in the New Testament. That's going to be, you can do a little bit better with timelines and always be pointing them to it, and that's what you have to do if you don't have a chronological curriculum. But just making it a bigger deal would be better than nothing. So I think it's just important, because the idea for us is to raise children who, by the time they get to junior high and high school, that they are familiar with the Bible. They're not going to know everything, but they're going to be familiar with it, and they're going to be able to hear someone mention something that they remember a Bible lesson from. And so imagine how much more impactful their little learning as a junior high school student is going to be if they're hearing about this Bible character or a book of the Bible that they know they've studied a couple of times. And I think one of the reasons even adults are overwhelmed and they sit there at church and they don't have their Bibles out, they're lost. I think they sometimes feel lost. You have the 66 big old thick Bible. Sometimes they don't know where they're going with it, and they just, how much we can fix that as Bible school teachers. We can say that our children will be familiar with the Bible. They're going to know what all the way through, and a good curriculum is really what you do to get there. It's why we're doing it, actually. And I would say, when you're thinking about curriculum too, to beware of a curriculum that's just too heavy on concepts. They look so cute. They're usually really modern and bright. But if all the kids are learning is about being a friend or trusting Jesus, trusting God, and I'm not making light of that, what I mean is that that's all they're getting, and they're not learning the Bible. See, all of those things come later. And in fact, if you know anything about education at all, Bloom's taxonomy says the very first thing you do is build knowledge. And in fact, all these kids who in our age group are maybe the 5th and 6th graders or beyond this, but they're still in that phase of learning where they're just learning facts and information. They're not even developmentally usually able to make those applications. We can guide them a little bit. And I'm not saying if you study David and Jonathan that you can't emphasize friendship, or Hannah and emphasize praying, but in their little minds, so often we try so hard to teach them the application lessons. At the end of the day, they barely know anything about what the Bible said about Hannah or Samuel. They don't know the names, and we've spent like half of our time, talking about, and that one's probably a bad example because praying is such a good thing to talk about, but you get the idea. Like, just really be careful. Like, your job, I think, as elementary teachers, is to just teach them so they know the Bible lesson, to not get so involved in application. And some curricula are very much heavily based on just those lofty ideas that come. If your children know the Bible, the ideas are going to come later. They'll know it, and they'll be able to ingest it better. And so look at your visuals and things. Make sure they are up to date. Most visuals are extra after Bible school curriculum is even purchased. Not many come with visuals, or if they do, they're like one or two little pictures. So anything you put in your program, like some of these things, they need to kind of be updated. You don't want little cartoon drawings. That's a pet peeve, because we want to see the kids. We want the kids to see that these were real people we're teaching them about. They're not little cartoon characters. They're real. I mean drawings, but they need to be realistic drawings, not cartoon drawings. And there is a difference. And if you're going to have any application pictures, make sure they're up to date and relevant. I've gone through old curricula before where I see like a big old tube television, and as nostalgic as that is, they don't even know what that is. That would just be confusing to them, or the the phones, or the moms and the dads from the 50s going into the church building, like, they know that doesn't look right, they know. So, like, really be careful about choosing. I'm not saying that there's never a time for some picture like that's old. And a lot of old Bible visuals are some of the best ones. So I'm not saying that, but I'm talking about the pictures of people that are modern people, supposedly. In the day, they would have been modern people, but not anymore. So be careful, and I don't think it's good to use those. And laminate your visuals. Laminate your visuals. They last longer if it's possible at all. There's no sense in making something. It's a pet peeve of mine when somebody has cut something out like this right here, and it doesn't get laminated, and it's been taped up to a wall, and so their way of storing it is just to pile it on top of each other, and when you pull it off, you're pulling off all the color, and like, just laminating helps keep it good. So do that for sure. Make sure that things are clearly labeled. That's the last thing we're going to talk about in the last few minutes here. And make sure that you have a good filing system. And that's what all this is about, so we're getting there. But also, make use of the internet. I'm going to talk about this stuff in just a second, and a lot of it is what you could find on the internet. And we have so much more access to visuals because of the internet now than maybe 20 years ago even. So print things out, use them, and see what's there. If you don't know about Debbie Jackson's blog, how many of you know this? Oh, wow. I'm about to give you the best resource ever. It's called BibleFunForKids.org. That's the address. She has tons of visuals, and some of them I have here. You'll get to see. All right, so this is what I want to do now. I think.
Is that a real-to-life picture?
Yes, that's our appreciation.
Looks like Howard said it.
Isn't that gorgeous?
I'm going to show you what we did. That's the next thing we're going to talk about. I have a whole set of pictures we're going to talk about.
.org.
Yes, .org.
And not .com.
I think it's .org.
Because I can't get anything.
And is it number 4 or FOR?
FOR. Debbie Jackson. When I'm Googling it, even to this day, I'll say
Is this what it looks like?
Yes.
Okay, then it's .com.
.com. I am
Oh,
so
you're good.
sorry.
You're good.
I don't know why I have that one there. Okay, so use the internet. All right, so now this is the one you're probably like, we should have done this the whole time, but this other stuff is so important because if you don't have these other things in place, this stuff is just going to get, it'll be a mess because you'll have it all and people won't even want to use it. It'll just get, so anyway, this is what I'm thinking anyway. So let's talk now about how you organize the stuff because you have to have stuff if you're teaching. It's just part of it. All right. These are, I'm going to give you a little bit, why do we even need resource rooms? I'm going to make a push for them because here's reasons. And there are many ways to organize it. Okay, that's the first thing I'll say. Every congregation has its own unique needs, your own unique curriculum. I don't know, like this one that works for us, we use the same curriculum. But if you have a congregation where you're using, and I probably should have mentioned that earlier, if one group uses this and then I have heard of a congregation where the people just say, well, whatever y'all want to teach, like individual teachers. And I'm like, why would we do that? Because everybody's going to be studying Moses and Elijah and never get around to studying Acts. It could happen, so we need a plan. If choose a curriculum, have a meeting that says this is how we're teaching our kids the Bible at XYZ congregation. Here's what we're going to use, and make sure you don't have these huge gaps. They need to have gone through the Bible, no matter how you end up doing it. But it's easier to do that if you're using one curriculum. I will just say that because that would just make sense. Like you're not going to have as much of a gap possibility there. But so there's so many ways to organize your stuff though, and depending on your congregation, it's determined. Obviously by the size of your congregation, the size of your building, what you can have and what you can't have, how many students you have will make a big difference in this. But I think it's better to think big. My husband has used this quote a lot. It was from John Kennedy, who said, "Sometimes you throw your hat over the wall and then go after it." And so that just means sometimes if you think big, what you want, you're acting and operating like where you want to be, instead of saying, well, we just don't even need that. Let's get past that. This whole conference is about being equipped and building and just, doing the best we can to build our churches and to equip our members. So let's think big. And that's what this happened at Central, because they had not had a really good resource room. We moved there and I thought, what have these teachers been using? Most of their visuals were packed up because that's not our curriculum anymore. And we're going to talk about how you use old curriculum, old visuals into your new curriculum even, and it greatly improves what you were using. So just think, it's always obviously about budget. But here's what happened. Well, first, a resource room also helps save money because you're not having some stuff in one room and other things in other rooms. You're able to share. And so if somebody's made an activity, then another teacher doesn't have to go buy materials to make that same activity. It's just being able to be reused, especially if it's organized in a way that works. And you also, if you have a good place to put things, and I'll show you an example of this, you're going to be able to have those things that other people have made that they might share with the church. Maybe it's a teacher who's taught at other places, and she sees that there's a good resource room, and she says, you know what, can you use this? And I said, you bet we can, and I have a place to put it. I'm just not going to stuff it over here. It's going to be front and center so people can see it and use it. So there are many benefits to a resource room. And it allows unexperienced teachers to feel like I can teach because I have stuff. I don't have to make it myself. It's already there for me. So anything you can add to your room makes it better. Now, these thoughts are why we even did this. I want teachers to be able to, there are not many of us, like I said at the very beginning, are the kind of teachers that are like Debbie Jackson, who have programs on her computer and make all these wonderful ideas. Hands-on Bible school teacher makes all of her, it's just amazing. But I'm not like that. And most of the women you're going to be trying to get to teach are not going to be that way. They're going to be coming in from work. They're going to be dragging their kids, and they just threw down some supper, and they're coming in on Wednesday night. And we need to meet teachers where they are, not expect them to be who they're not yet. They can still teach without being Miss Creativity and Miss Arts major who can draw her people from, by freehand or whatever. So meet people where they are, and that's where some of these thoughts came to me when I was helping Central build a room like this. We actually have they're just 2 classrooms. They're not very big, but that, again, can be relative. One is a little bit bigger, but we just have one room that's called our resource room that just has our supplies and the laminator, border and stuff, and one room that's got our visuals for our specific Bible school program that's labeled according to the quarter and the lesson themselves. So that's what these pictures are going to be about. We'll go through them. This is just, we started from nothing. Like, we had hardly any storage. We just had a bunch of teacher stuff thrown in the same room with a bunch of flowers from church, and it was just a mess. And so we were renovating, and there was actually going to be some new space for some of that stuff. And I thought, while we're doing all of this, and I presented the elders, can we move our resource room? Because it was way over on the other side of the building, and all the classes that really needed it were way over here. I'm like, can we just use that classroom? So we moved some things around. We evaluated like what we could use, and we did put the 5th and 6th grade into a smaller classroom than they needed at the time, because the next group that came in, they had like 10 kids, and so we kind of oops on that, but now it's okay. Just one of those things. They really probably needed a bigger room, but we were trying to make the most of what we had with our space. So these are just IKEA shelves. They're not, IKEA is not really that expensive. So these are adjustable, so we could add more if we wanted later on. And this is just like this one side, and this is a tower bookshelf that they have. And then these are just all of our basic supplies, like pencils and markers, and there's some instruction paper there, and some die cut. You can see our die cut area. It'll be a better picture of that later, but that's just that. And then this other side, this is the infamous bulletin board area that needs organizing. But this is the other side where it's just the crafty materials. And there's a cubby here with just some closed storage of things you don't really want out. They're labeled so the teacher can see. But it's stuff that's not going to be used a lot. Just little plastic bags, things that need like a bigger container. And we used what we had. These are old desks that were just stuffed in rooms. We had 2 that were alike. We just butted them up together, and that's like a little work area. It'd be nice if we had a new table, but that works just fine. This was an old coat rack that used to sit out in the foyer before they redid the foyer. And one of our members, one of the guys, I can't remember now what it looks like. He made 2 levels to it only had the top hanging level, and he added the second one that was over here. Like, we cut it down half size and put another level, if that makes sense. So it would fit on this particular wall, because here's the door. So this room is not huge. It's just, organized. And then, let me make sure. We do use clear containers. I think that's really important because you can kind of see what's in them. If you start stuffing everything in old boxes or colored totes, even like that one right there, that might be what you have, but it's not going to be serviceable for very long because people won't see and they won't use it if they don't know what's in there. So these are just like buckets of fabric that probably we got probably way too much of that. And this is stuff, like I said, that needs to be organized. So it's a work in progress still. All right. Another example of using what we have is this little thing right here. In all of our classrooms, we used to have these big, long, one half would be a bulletin board and one half would be a chalkboard. Nobody uses chalkboards much anymore, and we were going to be painting the rooms, and I thought, we can still use this, and this is what I had in my mind. This side, what is that blue stuff is just felt, so it's useful for like Betty Lucan stuff or any kind of felt thing. And this was a piece of metal that's magnetic, and so you can use that. And of course, since it was an old chalkboard, kind of part of it was chalkboard. There's a tray, so that's kind of neat. So they hung it low. We have two of those, like in the little preschool rooms. But that was just an example of, we had all of these things and everybody could have just thrown them out. But I was like, no, here, we could use it for this and this and this. And that was the idea. We painted it and replaced the backing of stuff so we could use it like that. And then this, one of our elders built, but really, this looks amazing. But it's not expensive to do. It's just the wood. You just have somebody who's good at woodworking, who's going to do a good job with it. Because really, this is the biggest thing where there were, where you can hang your paper, but we needed to save space. And up until then, our paper was just all in this huge, two big buckets, and it took up so much room. So having anything up on the wall saves your space, since this is not a great big room. And hanging your border like that makes it visible. People use it. This is just a mess of scrap paper. So, keeping it real. This is not. All right, and then that's the other side. Is where our laminator is. And once again, somebody had, years ago, that was sitting in a room with a laminator on it. We took one part of it off because it works better, just completely flat, and had a little tray up here, thinking it would be good for the laminator stuff to run right across it. But if you ever laminate, you know that that's not really true. It needs to just fall down. Yeah. So we moved it and rearranged some stuff, but that's what we're using there. But that was already there. So look around for tables and storage things that you could use, a bookshelf or whatever. All right. This is the other room where we keep our lesson visuals. And I told you about those women, the 15 to 20 women. Most of these things were put together by them. I'm going to show you what they look like up close and personal. We label this. Does no one use Apologetics Press? Because this is probably going to be like Greek when you try to explain. But here's the point. Arrange your lessons. If you're trying to build visuals that are useful for teachers and they can use them, they can go in and find where they are. Use whatever curriculum you're using, and that's how it needs to be organized. Try not to just put all your Moses stuff in a big tote or two, and then everybody's got to, they got to find that one lesson about Moses, the baby Moses lesson, or the bronze serpent lesson, and they're. So arrange it. It's much better to take the time to arrange each lesson. So if you have visuals for XYZ lesson, it needs to be labeled for that lesson and separated. Does that make sense? So that you're not, I know sometimes it's not as easy to do that because it kind of overlaps sometimes, but it's so much better to try to do that. All right, and then making sure. And each bag, I'm going to show you in a minute, but you're getting pictures here, and I might go back and pull up the picture, but here's how we label. So like in Apologetics Press, there's an Old Testament, they have 4 years. This would be year 3, you can't really see that, but it's Old Testament 5, and it's lesson 10 in that quarter. Okay, that's the quarter, this is the lesson, and that's the name of the lesson. So it's just very clear about what material is in this flip chart here. And then you know where to hang it back, because all the years you can see back here. This is year 1, and that's year 2, and you'll see better pictures of that. But there's labels here. This would be year 3, and this would be year 4, and that fits our curriculum. It helps, right? I'm on this lesson. Here's the stuff for this lesson, and that's how it's arranged. And then let's see. So there's examples of bags, but one of them is we use any old material has been put in with the appropriate lesson of the curriculum we're using now, because it was in buckets and nobody's using it. And I'm like, look at this is a big poster of Esther. There's like 2 or 3 pictures of that, and I'm thinking it's just been folded up in a chart because, well, that's not our curriculum. Well, pictures are pictures, and they can be used in the new curriculum, And so this is an example of the flip chart. I'm going to show you where you can get that. But if you want to know a great place to print off these pictures, and what you'll see a lot of this here is freebibleimages.com. And that is .com, I do know that. So freebibleimages.com, there are hundreds of Bible pictures. Here's an example of just the kind of pictures. They are beautiful, they're bright, and they are realistic. And the benefit of using, we try to use, you will find some different kinds of pictures on that site, but there's so many of this particular kind, and you'll know if you were looking at it, you would see what I mean. And I try to use this kind of picture that they have on there, because this is Joseph. Well, Joseph won't look the same because he goes to Egypt and everything, but like Peter's the same. He's got the same clothes on and everything, so the kids can start to learn, like, oh, that's Peter, and they remember. But these are the new visuals that you could print off, and we just copy and paste the words from the lesson onto the back, and it's just a way that the teacher can feel like, okay, this is the main thing I need to say about this lesson. Right here, this picture, say this picture, say this. And she can add or take away depending on her age level, but that's not been that, it's taken time, but it's not a hard thing to print like your lesson from your curriculum and then print off some pictures from the internet, and it makes a nice, like, grounded place to start when you're teaching your lesson. And so I already talked about the years. These things here are just the more bulky items. Some are general, but the idea eventually going forward is if they're like right here, the nativity puzzle, that's going to be eventually above where Jesus was born, so that people can see. It may be there now because I've been moving stuff around, but that's where if there's a puzzle or a big bucket of something that goes with Joseph or Moses, it's where it needs to be, where somebody can see it. And then you have to tell people. That's the hurdle I'm in now, is saying, you see all this, you can actually use it. Sometimes it's amazing how people don't think they can use it. I don't know why.
I did wonder, do your teachers actually go in there, pull that down, and take it with them to the class?
They take the bags, yes.
Okay.
I'm trying to get them more used to this stuff right here, because sometimes it's too much, like, oh, I'll just get my bag, I'll just get my flip chart, whatever. But some of these are really cool things. Some of them are just general baskets, like you can see, or animals for creation or whatever.
If there's a thing to go with it, you could put it in the bag. Like there's a puzzle, and
You could, yes,
might
you
be
could.
helpful.
You could add that, definitely. Anything like that is good. The more you can communicate like that, and you can see the little signs that help us know. And then that's just another picture. Here's an example too of all of this cute stuff was made for a very special VBS. When teachers get all fired up and they make all this cute, wonderful stuff, you have a resource room. That thing sits up there. This is Goliath. His mouth and his eyes, and they threw little Velcro balls to hit him, And so those are neat things that if you don't have a room and a place, somebody might make it, but it gets tossed away, stuffed at their house somewhere. But now we have a place where we can put some things that people make. Somebody this last week or two made a bronze serpent because that was the lesson they were on. Well, we have a place to put that now. And they without me telling them, they just put it in the room. I'm like, oh, they just made that. It's just a cute little post with a serpent head.
The
And
Mark and the Covenant, where is that?
yeah.
That's beautiful.
I know. All right, and then you always going to have these general maps and charts, so I just kind of label the area for those to be. And then these are some of the things I was saying, like if you have boats and nets that are going to get, maybe they're used for more than just one lesson, that's a good idea to put them like in a bucket or something, and you just have to pick a place, and hopefully people start looking, but put them in an obvious place and label them, that's good. And here's an idea for filing. And you'll see there's all kinds of stuff you can print out from the internet, an activity page. If you have a book, a resource book, but who wants to flip through resource books all of the time to find the lesson they need for that particular Sunday? Not many people. And so this is good to have a place where you can, if you printed out an activity or a craft pattern, it has a place it can go so that the next time you teach that class, it can be pulled up easily. That's what this is. There's a better picture next, but this is just a picture of the Betty Lucan. I don't ever use Betty Lucan. A lot of people love it. I just don't. It's just not my thing. I don't know. A lot of little kids, really little preschoolers really love that. But But this one is one that I would use more, and it's just. My son called me. He knows what I'm doing. Anyway, this is labeled again for our curriculum that we use now, and so what it is, like this is year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and it's labeled. And this would make more sense if you knew about, but it would work with whatever curriculum you did. Like year 2, here's Old Testament 3, Old Testament 4, and then New Testament 3 and New Testament 4. Because they do 2 quarters in the Old, 2 quarters in the New. That's how they arrange their curriculum or their study through the Bible. So anyway, so that just makes it more like I know where to go. And this is something that you have to really like remind, like, oh, there's lots of little things here. Check it out. And so I've labeled, okay, you see the colors here, Old Testament 3 is in blue. That was just because each quarter has 4 quarters to keep it just visually, like this is 1 quarter blue, 1 quarter yellow. And it's just a way to, little things like that just make it seem like, oh, I know what I'm doing here, instead of just a whole pile of files. And it's easier to put back too. But they're labeled for the lesson that we're using. Each lesson has a file, not just Moses, not just Joseph or Paul or Peter, because there's so many lessons on those people. And we could say that with most of the things we study. We study through several lessons about Moses and several about, Peter or whatever. So be specific and label like each lesson so that each lesson has its own file. And then we printed off just the whole series because it's easy to see where you're going and what lessons are coming up in your quarters, and it's just a visible thing. And then this is just a really real picture of the old curriculum, the old things people had stored in their classrooms that need to be gone through and need to be looked at and laminated. Maybe it's a great picture. Some of it, I'm going to show you what we've done with some of the old stuff here in just a minute, but I just if you are building a room, it can get overwhelming with all of this stuff to know what to do with it, and you can't do it all at once. So we had these in the room that were empty. I just rolled them down, asked for forgiveness later kind of thing. I just rolled them down to the room. Nobody was using them. And so I just said, okay, year 2. I'm not dealing with year 2 right now, but all this stuff, which is why this is important. If you're the one working and organizing, year 2, I know what lessons are in year 2 because I have these charts and I can say, okay, that's when we study about Joseph and Moses, and that's when we study about, whatever New Testament lessons coming up. And so then I was able to just start sorting into appropriate years. So I'm not worried about this stuff yet. And it's what I do when there's time, when the quarter's coming up. Maybe I want to flip through the drawer to see, oh, that's cute. I'll make this right now. But this is just kind of a holding area. It helps. Okay, so let's look through this stuff really quick because a lot of this, I'm going to go back here, and if there's another picture you want to look at, I'm going to actually land there so you can see what overall this stuff would look like. So here's the kind of stuff that's hanging. Okay, the first thing I mentioned is that we print off these pictures from freebibleimages.com. They're really pretty. They're simple. They just print off like that. I used to want people making them to cut the little white off, but then I started feeling bad because we've been working on them all the time, and I just don't ever say it. Most people don't even do it anymore, but there's a lot of flip charts if you're doing. But these are good
on the backs of those.
This is what copy and pasting from our curriculum's website because it's online.
Got it.
With Shaping Hearts, we had to have, when we were making flip charts for that, and the other place I was at, some lady had to type because they don't have scripted lessons. But that is a good thing about Apologetics Express. That's the bad thing about Shaping Hearts. But the good thing is about Apologetics Express is you have points of interest. So every point of interest, I might print out 1 or 2 pictures, and I have them labeled. So like that was the introduction, point 1, point 2A, actually. Just ever how you wanted to do it. and we, picked a picture for each one, and then I'd print them out. Adam would cut the paper, we'd stuff them in there with the words, and the ladies would take them and put the flip chart together. So, and that's just, the teachers would love these because they know what to say. Even if they don't read it word for word, if they know, oh, I'm going to talk about how the brothers became even more jealous. Look how mean that, like it gives them something to look at. So that is time consuming, but not hard. It's just a lot of time. And a lot of people need the help, but the more people you have it helping, they're going to, be better. And you can see here, again, that we have a bag for this is lesson 1. This is the same lesson, but I have a bag for each class because, these bags are,
I was going to ask.
they're from,
Fido for them, but no, you just have.
yes, yeah. And so you can find these and order these kind. These particular kind with the gray handles are the sturdiest. There's some, these are like Monaco hanging bags. They use them in pharmacies a lot of times, but in libraries use them, but you can find different sizes. Yeah, and so the gray ones are sturdier. They make white ones that pull apart up here too easily, so refrain from those if you can. But the 2s and 3s, the reason this is labeled specifically for 2s and 3s is because they spend more time on each lesson, because we decided a couple years ago that there is no need for 2s and 3s to have to be studying certain lessons through the curriculum with the College Express, because it's not necessarily different for 2s and 3s as it is. So you have to do that on your own. And so the teachers who did preschool then, I know this is for elementary, but I arranged that and tried to meet the teachers where they are. And so I labeled that so no one can get this one. And we can put in any extra thing, because they need more for each lesson if they're going to do it for 2 or 3 Sundays. Okay, so that was why I wanted to show you that. But the other thing is, like, here again, this is a different lesson down, like this is lesson 4 about Joseph, but it's in its own bag so that it's just more organized, and you know what you're teaching, what lesson you're on, and you get that bag. And it's just labeled very simply according to our curriculum, what lesson, what quarter, and what lesson it is. Other things we put in these bags are the old pictures, but look how gorgeous. These were just piled up. And I'm thinking, no, they're going to be stored so people can use them. When we study Joseph, this is from probably Living Way or something. And here we go. They're ready to be used. They're labeled now. This is an example when since this is a group of pictures that go through a bunch of parts of Joseph, our curriculum breaks his life up a little bit more, but I just would label very generally lessons 1 through 6. Because this could be something that teachers could just grab and keep for a few weeks, and this would be first come, first serve. Because, obviously you can't make copies. Other things, like I picked Joseph so you could see different things. This was in a bag. This is from Debbie Jackson's blog, the Bible Fund. It's just Joseph. You could do a bulletin board. This is just one example. But she has lessons about so many different Bible lessons, and she will have the download of the pictures, very often the same kinds of pictures. That right here is what she uses also. But she will have her Bible lesson as a download, and you can print out that page. When she teaches first and second grade, sometimes it's very basic, but there's something easy to print out. It's not like having to copy and paste. Another thing would be like in a separate bag. This was a game that we bought. I can't even remember the name. These are missionaries who make it's a nonprofit, and she gives it away like at the Freed Hardman lectures, and they don't even ask for donations, but they can't ask to be paid for it, so they don't want to even cross that line, but they take donations. So like she had tons. This is just a little game, but it's in its own, and you could combine, if you had 2 or 3 of these, you could put it all in the same bag.
So you just like hang that close to this stuff?
Yes, it's all like this, yeah.
Because that's not necessarily like one lesson that you'll listen to.
Yes. Yeah, well,
Year
yes,
5.
this might be, at the beginning.
Okay.
You're right. I see what you're saying. Yeah, like if it's a 1 through 6, because it's going to cover his life, not just one lesson of his life. Yeah, you just put it somewhere, and then eventually the idea. This is all still kind of new to us, but they're going to learn to look for this stuff at the beginning and see. And also, there's so many old curriculum that have these big sets of pictures. I have some. And if it's about Joseph or Moses, I put it at the beginning because they might not use us to teach, but you can just see teachers putting those up in the rooms as a review board, so they could take them and use them any way they wanted to and just return them. And that's the other thing. You have to be very vocal about what you do when you're done. Like, can you bring it back? Is there going to be a bucket for everybody else if somebody else wants to put it back? Right now, people have been pretty good about hanging them back. Another example of what we put is this is an older teacher who she doesn't even teach at our congregation. She taught at another congregation near Nashville, but she evidently kept all of her stuff. And one day she's like, "You may not want this, but do you care? I got some flip." I'm like, "Are you kidding?" Yes, I want them because we have a resource room and we can hang stuff that other people have made. And I've not used this one yet, but I mean, this is just she had 2 or 3. And just, look at that. Just really good. I don't know the way that goes. It's upside down to me. But look, you know what I'm saying? It's just any little extra. And this is labeled and goes, of course, with, like I did this at the end of a review. Sometimes you're just making executive decisions in the moment. But anyway. And then this is an example of some old print visual aids from another, but I'm using them and I put them in our lesson on Gideon that goes with our current curriculum. Because why not? Because Gideon is Gideon and you could use it in any manner, different ways. Another way to make sure you're implementing as much as you can is all of these were actually VBS lessons that we still teach. So all that hard work and the extra little cute things have a place to go. And we use, like this one was David and Saul. So this is an example of some of David Jackson. It has our regular flip chart and a couple of little extra pictures about a bow and a robe that Jonathan gave David. That was from an old set of pictures. But Debbie has on her blog things like this where you tell the story and you have a picture that can put up on a magnet board, and it's got the words go with each number here. So as you go through the lesson, and it was like a review thing, and so we made one for VBS for every teacher. So we were able to just stick it one in each bag that way, since we had more than just one. But making use of what you make even for VBS. If you organize your stuff like this, and you can keep it always for this particular lesson and use it the next time you just have it in a regular Bible class. And how fun is that to have some neat little extra that you just had a place to put and now you can use it again? That's good. And by the way, the magnet tape, this is awesome stuff because it's just like a little roll of tape. It's thin, so that's the best kind of magnet tape. And it's strong, and you just pull it and it tears. You don't have to worry about pulling the paper off. It's already sticking on the back. So that was at Walmart. So anyway, I thought I'd put that one there. And this is another, this was Prodigal Son was one of our lessons, and all that cute little stuff that we printed off. This was from Debbie's blog too, by the way. You have these little pig and corn games. You match up the corn with the pig for questions, right? And so they're on magnets too. And this was an old thing that I had in a file that we just used and we covered. And, it's just because we have it on a file and have a filing system. So I'm like, oh, that's cute. We'll make one to send home with the kids. And these were just the extras left over. But because I know where I'm keeping the Prodigal Son stuff, it was easy just to put all that with the regular lesson and have it ready for the next time we do that lesson. Now, some of the old curriculum stuff. I want you to look at this. This is an old New Living Bible Lessons take-home sheet. hardly anybody would use this like it is now. I kept one, so in case there's something that somebody wanted to do, maybe they wanted to do, you know, this little thing. But you can turn these little things very easy. Now with like copiers, this was just color copied and blown up a little bit to make a Reba story on just from this old thing that was sitting in a bucket, you know. So like this is easy. You can have it and just glued it on the construction paper to make it look prettier. But you know, this is just good. It's laminated. You would store that right back with that lesson and be able to read through and review this. Oh, and I don't have that page. Oh, this was on
other stuff in my bag.
No, it's okay. This was a little bitty on a paper just like this. And it was just a little question fill in the blank thing with a word bank up here, like in this blue bubble. We blew it up, and that's bigger. We made that really big, and I blew the word answers up. And so instead of it being writing, it's just like a quick little matching game. But that's all from just the old stuff that's pretty and laminated. You could put like a bag on the back to keep the answers. And this is the same type of thing, little memory verse thing. When you laminate something, you can use dry erase markers on it and wipe it off and just use it over and over. And they even make like washable dry erase things for kids, which is always a plus. But there again, that was just something I kind of enlarged. This is something too, same idea, is that that's from Debbie Jackson blog. I'm giving her a big plug. She has these little worksheets after a lesson that they can choose the right answer. And if you have those dry erasable things, they can just circle. Or you could just talk about it. But laminating it and having it looking nice makes it usable over and over. And the same idea here, where you have this went from this just from some book somewhere. I don't even know where. It's an old file I have borrowed from somebody or made a copy, and had my son color that to make it colorful. And then you could use that just like that and make it pretty, you know, just maybe like that. But for VBS one year, we blew that up and made a big old poster of that. So we got to do that at class, like, you know, so everybody could see it as a group. And so there's just so many, we have so many advantages now because of our technology and computers and you know, color. We have a color printer, and most copiers now are going to be able to make color copies. So.
When you blow something up like that big, do you just have it sent to Staples or something like that?
It's just printed. If you can see that.
Do you have a printer that will print this big?
This is 4 pieces that we just
of
glued or taped together. It's, just,
Okay.
it's not even perfect. There's probably places where the words.
Yeah.
We did
Here.
Right. That's my point. You know. So yeah, probably some places could do that.
In my mind, that's
Adam did that. He does that a lot. Like when he's doing pew packers, he might make a chart, but he just blows it up. He's done that for years for fun. When he was a youth minister, trying to have charts for classes and stuff. But that's how I knew that, you know, had that idea. These also, this is nothing about real specific curriculum, but from Debbie's blog, flashcards that just review the Bible. And I thought you might want to see this because this is the kind of stuff she has on her blog. You just have to get in it and just go with it and print out. Really investigate her blog. Another thing we put in these bags are picked for books. If it's a specific book, it can go in a specific bag with a specific lesson. Because if you don't, it's going to end up on a bookshelf. Nobody's going to go and flip through the books to find the one they need. Having it hanging in clear bags makes it so much more visible. And people are going to use it more. And then these little arch books, are y'all familiar? These are like $2 or $3 a piece. They rhyme. 99% of them are perfectly scriptural. There's only 2 or 3 that have like a bishop and a garb that you might refrain from. Sometimes the back letter to the parents has accepting Jesus into your heart kind of thing. So you would definitely not just want to be handing these out just indiscriminately to the kids, but like reading them yourself to the kids. They love, every time I've ever read a book, But since they're so cheap, you can make them and put them. The idea, we haven't got this far yet, but Jesus walks on the water. Since these are like $2 or $3, just buy 2 or 3 of them for each class and just stick them in a bag so that they're, oh, look at that little book, instead of like, I never get anything off of that shelf. You know, it just makes it more visible.
They're called Arch.
Yes.
Okay.
Arch books, and they've been around for a long time. Sometimes they're old ones are out of print, but then there's always these new ones. And you know, you just have to read them. I've never come across any of them that, except maybe like there was one time that had like a couple little kids with communion with a bishop that was about a point, like an application at the end. So
Yeah.
ever so often, yeah, there's
Be
some.
careful, yeah.
Most of them are perfectly fine, and they're so good. And here, if you wanted to look at some of the stuff we put like in our buckets, it would be something like these little tabernacle things. It came with that, and also that, and I thought that's a neat way to just have a little bag, but you don't need to get squished, so you put it in a bucket. This is just a little general fish game and fish cutout, so I just did that so it's not just thrown in a bucket somewhere we can't see it. It's labeled. And here's some examples of what we might put in our files, from older curriculum that's already, just so somebody could pick it up and use it, to, you know, some of the same stuff I was using to make this stuff came from old stuff like this. And the idea is, as we go, we're going to add new things to our files too. So I know that was a lot, but I wanted you to see how you get from. You don't get here without getting people behind it, because if you one person can't do this, and you've got to really think about what your teachers need. You got to make sure people are excited about it and show what you're going to do with it when you make it, so that they feel like it's useful to them to help out with it, and all of it kind of just builds together, and you can end up with none of this is like all of this was just somebody else's work printed out. You know, none of it was what somebody has made. There's only a handful of things I have in that resource room where a teacher actually made it up herself. So,
2 things anyway, but how long did it take you to get this set up sort of reasonably moving?
we in, let's see, 2019 is when we were on year 3, and I really wanted to start making flip charts. So we started printing some things out. People would sign up to help, and I printed them out and gave them the bags. I kind of showed them at first, like, here's what you need to do, and here's what you need to do, and here's what you need. But then it turned out to where they had done them enough that I just put them on the front pew, and might make, you know, there's some Bible school bags for people to work on if you want, and those people who knew what it was about would come and grab 2 or 3 bags and bring them back next week or whatever. And so it's been a few years off, you know. We're on our last year of flip chart making. But it has made a difference. It turns teachers who don't know what to say and thinking they never could teach, they could at least show up, have something like that, pull something like this from a bag and say, you know, I think oh, look at that. Yeah, I think I'll read the book, or I'll, you know, use this game.
And the second question, and I saw that earlier, you had one for 2s and 3s.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do one for each class breakdown? Like if you've got 4 elementary?
We don't yet, but what I have told, if there's a teacher who is prone to making her own like cute stuff, like, and we have maybe 1 or 2, I would say if that teacher usually always ends up teaching like 1st and 2nd grade, I think it's perfectly fine to say, I've done this. Like if I meet something, I'm like, that's my cute activity, and when I teach this lesson, I want that to be my bag, and I just wrote 1st and 2nd grade on it. But we haven't done that with all of them here at Central, because all the flip charts are the same. If you were actually making up your own words somehow, or if you had a curriculum to where each lesson had its own words, and you would probably need the label so that they wouldn't get mixed up. But yeah, they don't necessarily have to be. So, any other questions? Stones to throw?
Brains
No.
explode.
You did an excellent job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
And,
doing this.
If anybody want, I mean, the pictures are, can be, I'm sure, actually, they probably have them, because he had them loaded up on his computer, so if there was something that somebody wanted, I mean, if that's helpful, or any other questions ever, because it's been definitely a team effort, especially this stuff, and then, just having the importance kind of built into people, and knowing just that you're working on it has excited people too, so.
But they had come at me when they asked me to teach and showed me that, and like, here's what you do. Like, I would have done
See,
that. So,
see what I'm saying?
Like,
That's what I mean. That's
I
what
would
you
be
can
like,
get to.
Because so many people are, choose not to do it because of just the level of difficulty to, you know, if you don't have any confidence in yourself to do it, and sometimes just the sheer time.
You don't have time to make it. So if you can find the people who do have time to make it and let them do it, and teachers who can go on teaching,
Right.
can do the teaching. That's kind of what I was trying to get at, like using all people, because it makes what 2 or 3 teachers could never do turn into something like, it might take you 4 or 5 years, like, you know, to get. Of course, this is all through COVID too, where we were all, you know, how it is. We were about,
We needed something to do.
we did classes, we called classes for report, you know, and we had to go through all of those decisions. And I can't even now remember how we did it, to be honest. Like, but
we all got through.
we got through it, and
Yeah.
so that time was also through those years too of figuring out. And you know, sometimes it's been discouraging because like, we've had a big in our elementary, like we have this big gap now. Sometimes I'm like, well, I do it because I'm imagining, I'm like JFK, and that way I want to say one day these halls are going to be full. And sometimes they get fuller if you have done this stuff already.
Right.
And so that's the part of what I was trying to say. Like, if we have small congregations, it's really easy to say, well, our little Johnny, he's the only one that comes to second grade. But he might not always be, and he probably will be if we don't really do stuff and get our stuff, you know, exciting.
Well, and the better you do it, the more exciting the kids are to
Yes.
come. And,
Yes.
you know, that has a positive effect too.
So there's all manner of ways, things you can do, and you know, we are just like, there's so much more, you know, I want to do and put in the room and have ready, and then you're gonna go through, and you want to go after you've done it. There's gonna be stuff you're gonna have to clear out and get rid of, and just like everything. But right now, ours is more newish, so we haven't got to that point yet. But I've been in ones that Lebanon Road is probably, I should give credit when Adam was preaching Lebanon Road, that Gene Williams and Sue Ross were the two over our little resource room. And I think because of them, I saw how useful it was to have this kind of working. And theirs was a little different, but they didn't print off these easy ones. I mean, she was old school. She didn't work on the computer. And she would take these little books, sometimes like a book like this, and make a flip chart like all beautiful and by 2, or she might color in some good graphics and make. And she would work for 2 or 3 weeks on just a flip chart. But it gave me the inspiration of what a resource room and a workroom could look like. That's what they called theirs, the workroom. But definitely was work involved in that room. But we call ours the curriculum room to keep it separate from the resource room, which not everybody can do that. It depends. If you had a huge room like this, by chance, you could do like half and half, or you could do 2 smaller rooms, or just doing the best you can with what you got. But it keeps it separated. It works. We can do that now, even though sometimes our business graders have a smaller room.
We don't really need their 4th graders, so I don't know why they didn't just use the bigger room when they had the
That's
opportunity.
Any questions you have, you can definitely ask. I will try to answer.
Yeah.